Welcome back to the Corridor channel, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 3 stages of growth for startups and what you need from your CTO. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to talk about specifically what the CTO needs to do at each of the 3 stages of the software development side of things. Just like CEOs, CTOs also need to adapt as the company scales and grows as a whole. CEOs will go from being a multi-hat wearer to going and becoming more leadership and building a team to finally becoming more of a visionary and guidance to its top executives. Same goes with the CTO. So when you're choosing a CTO, especially at an early stage, try to see if they're going to be adapting with your product or your company, or they're going to be more powerful in a specific role within the organization. By the way, when you're choosing, it is okay for a CTO to not grow with the company. There's a lot of times that the company will outgrow even the CEO. So it is important to understand that when you're choosing a CTO, make sure, especially at a startup stage, make sure that the CTO is well adapted for that stage at that time. When I first started my software company, I chose a CTO that was probably a little bit higher than a startup life. At a startup life, it's tough to choose a CTO because you need that CTO to understand UI, UX, and product management and coding. Whereas my CTO is more focused on infrastructure and architecture, which led to us delaying the product launch times and also made the cost of the product higher than it should have been. This is why it's important for you to understand where your CTO sits and where they need to focus their attentions on. So that being said, let's go into the first stage. First stage is the startup stage. That's where life is exciting. There's only a few of you guys. Everybody's all hands on deck. Everyone's doing everything around their company. Make sure that your CTO can match those business objectives with the product itself. That is the number one key thing, especially at a startup phase, for a CTO to be able to do. To be able to grab an idea, the concept, the mission, the vision, the idea, all in, and be able to manipulate that and build a product out of it that delivers that vision and goal and objective. So that's what really needs to happen from a CTO. So they need to be strong on understanding software development processes, of course. You also need to make sure that they understand product management. Product management is basically the bridge between the objective of the business and the product of the business. So it's important for him to be able to bridge that gap. And finally, UI, UX design. Because at the end of the day, you may know or understand what UI, UX is, but your CTO also needs to understand that, because as the development continues, there's going to be things that he's going to have to make calls on that is going to affect the UI, UX design as a whole. Now, you've started your company, you guys are crushing it, everything is going well, you guys are growing at an incredible rate, and you guys just raised the Series A, B, C, or D. That's where you go into the growth stage of the software company. When you're in the growth stage, your CTO becomes a completely different person. They no longer are focused around the coding day to day. They're no longer focused around the product management, and they're definitely not focused around the business objective versus the product itself. Now what they become is a product visionary, an overall arching objective of the product and what it's supposed to deliver to the end user. That, and also hiring. They're never gonna stop hiring. When it's early stage, their attention to hiring is maybe 10 to 20 to 30%. When it goes into growth stage, you're going to be growing so fast that you need to hire just as fast, if not faster than your growth rate, which means you need to focus on your hiring so you're hiring great talent. So his attention on hiring becomes about 60 to 70% of the time. The other 30% is revolved around architecture, infrastructure, and the overall product design and build. They, again, become less focused on the coding itself because they have a team to do that. They still have control over the product as a whole. Now, one thing that your CTO during this growth stage needs to focus on is documentation. This will help throughout the hiring process. As you are onboarding and hiring more and more developers, they can then come in and understand where and what needs to happen within the product, especially if there's bugs or tests or anything that needs to happen. Those documentations become critical, system critical. You can make a difference between onboarding a developer and having them be fully onboarded within 6 months versus 3 months, just from documentation. So you can save that 3 months of onboarding process time and help your organization grow even at a faster pace than you thought possible. But you're going into expansion. At this point, you've established the sales cycle, you understand the marketing, you know how you're gonna get to your customers, and the product is pretty ironed out. Expansion becomes an opportunity for you guys to expand your product line, to make it bigger and more powerful, making more integrations. All these things is considered expansion. At this point, the CTO needs to be able to understand what the company needs, which, by the way, is going to be, you guessed it, hiring, and focusing its attention on making sure that there's systems in place to make sure the product doesn't break, and also puts about 80% of their time towards hiring. At the end of the day, like I said, hiring great talent is going to be the #1 drawback to growth and expansion. So being able to hire great product managers, great UI, UX, and great talent in development and coding, you're going to need to pay attention to it. And your CTO is the quarterback of that attention. They're going to have to be making sure they understand where players need to be, such as developers, product managers, and when they need to be thrown the ball at. So let's recap. When you start a company, startup life is amazing, it's thrilling, it's exciting, everybody is on top of it, everyone is on top of each other, working as hard as they possibly can. Make sure your CTO can handle the entire product suite, which means from user experience to product management to development. The whole process needs to be well integrated together. Once you go into growth stage where you're raising series A, B, C, D, that's where you want your CTO to be a little bit more focused on hiring, documentation, and architecture. The system architecture becomes a critical thing about growth because it has to handle the amount of users that they're getting. So make sure that you focus your attention on the hiring and architecture and also documentation. That being said, once you hit the expansion rate, you then want to focus mostly on hiring and really playing the field and becoming the quarterback to being able to throw the ball where it needs to go. At that point, resource management and hiring become an absolute critical part of a CTO's role. We hope all these tips have helped you understand what it is that you need from your CTO, whether you're a growing company or a startup. But if you have any comments, please let us know down below. Otherwise, smash that like button and we'll see you next time. Quarter out.